From American Falls to Malad, we've got the biggest stories in District 5 covered. This is the Southeast Idaho Prepcast with Jordan Kaye.
That's right. Welcome into another edition of the Southeast Idaho Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com, your weekly destination for all things District 5 athletics in the state of Idaho. I'm Brandon Baney, and joining me as always from the Idaho State Journal, Jordan Kaye. Jordan, how's your week been so far?
Not too bad. Just, hanging in there. Got the first full week of high school football under our belt, so that's always a good feeling.
Yes, and your schedule is about to get incredibly busy because Idaho State University is also ramping up. Their football team opens up this weekend, or they?
Yeah, they play number 8 North Dakota on Saturday at Holt.
Ooh, that's going to be a good game, actually.
Yeah, it will. And I guess North Dakota's got some running back that was, the finalist for the FCS version of the Heisman. So I think that'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's always exciting. North Dakota for a brief moment was a member of the Big Sky Conference, and then they jumped ship. Yeah, it was for just a year or two, middle part of the decade. So anyways, ISU football's starting up, which is exciting, of course, but we're already off and running with the high school football season, Jordan. I think I feel pretty confident saying this. The game of the week in the entire state had to have been that rematch of the 2A state championship from a year ago, Firth traveling down to West Side to take on the Pirates in their season opener.
That might have been the best game of the year. I mean, I don't see how anything can top it. So, I mean, to recap, I guess, for those who don't know, West Side is down with about, what was it? It was like 15, 20 seconds left. They're at like the 33-yard line. Looks like they're going to lose. Their winning streak's going to come to an end. All of a sudden, Cage Brokens, West Side's unreal running back, makes a guy miss, goes to the end zone, scores with about 4 seconds left. They get the 2-point conversion. All of a sudden, they're up. Looks pretty good. Then
we lost.
Pooch kick that goes right in the middle of the field, and Firth somehow returns it as the clock's expiring to tie the game and send it into overtime. And overtime, Cage Brokens has a 10-yard touchdown right off the gate that, West Side capitalizes on. But, I mean, for the final 20 seconds to go that way is incredible.
Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, because the internet here at Idaho Sports HQ had a bump for a second, and we both got lost. So it refreshed. So this was a wild game. West Side was trailing, like you said, inside of 20 seconds
actually.
And so it was a 4th and 10 play as well, and West Side called a run play where basically Cage Brokens, he's a 3rd-year running back in that wing T system. They give him a lot of freedom to basically instead of going where the play is designed to counter back the opposite way, if that's what he chooses to do. Jason Turner from the Herald Journal in Utah wrote a nice article about it, and he talked to Coach Moser from West Side, and he said, yeah, we basically give Cage Brokens the freedom to, if he thinks he can do better making it a counter run instead of a direct run, then we give it to him. And that's what happened. Cage started one way, countered back the other way, ran it in 33 yards for the touchdown. And then, West Side thinks, hey, all right, we just pulled this game out.
Yeah.
And the ensuing kickoff to Firth, they returned it 80 yards for a touchdown with no time remaining to send the game to overtime. And actually, before it got to overtime, Firth had a chance.
Because I guess both teams are just not good at kicking field goals. Yes. And so they both elected to go for a 2-point conversion. West Side gets theirs with Brokens to make it a 6-point game, but Firth can't capitalize. And so, a crazy game in which both teams score in the final 10 seconds goes to overtime.
Yeah, and in overtime, Cage Brokens scores on the first play, and Firth was not able to score. And so West Side's 1-0, and Firth, we talked about last year in the championship game, Firth lost by almost 40 points to West Side. And the fact that it was a lot closer this time around, maybe the gap between West Side and everybody else isn't as wide as it used to be.
No, I think that's definitely a takeaway from this game is West Side has been so dominant for so long. But, even in the past 2 years when they're state champions, you go back and look at their schedule. Somehow they always have a couple games like this. for how dominant they are, they always find ways to, have a couple scares. I know last year against Bear Lake, it was 7-0. Like, there was a chance, Bear Lake had Owen Tusher slinging the ball around the field. All it took was him to connect on one deep pass and they get a 2-point conversion. Westside's knocked off. Aberdeen was close a year ago. I mean, so there's times like this, and I think Westside, for as many scares as they have, usually are, you can be pretty confident they'll turn it on when state playoffs comes on. But, I was pretty low on Firth, especially after being at that state title game. It didn't even look like they belonged on the same field. And so for them to see them do what they did on Friday, hang with that West Side for, 4 quarters and beyond, I think that's a good sign for them for the rest of the season.
Yeah, for sure. West Side, we talked about it. They're calm, cool, and collected last year. They beat Marsh Valley 14-6.
Yeah.
It was a tight game. The 7-0 game against Bear Lake, as you alluded to. And then in the semifinals, in that crazy blizzard/snowstorm, they only defeated Declo 7-0 to get to the 2A title game. So they know something about playing close games, that's for sure. So we talk about the gap maybe closing between West Side and everybody else. And I know a team in their own district that is like ready and eager is Aberdeen. That's where we both were on Friday night, as Aberdeen looked very impressive in their season opening victory over American Falls.
Yeah, no, that was such a fun game to go to because there was so much unknown with Aberdeen that I went into that game being like, okay, this might be a close game. Cale Adamson, this 6'2", 200-pound just monster, he played left tackle for Aberdeen last year. They were thinking like, we've got enough running backs. Maybe we'll move him to tight end. All of a sudden, a couple guys get injured. 10 days ago, they move him to tailback. He is unreal. Like could be one of the better running backs in 2A after what we saw. He runs a 4.51 at as big as he is, almost impossible to take down. He had one open field run where there were 2 defenders trailing him. Looked like they had a good angle to get him. All of a sudden, he turns on the burners and beats them by 10 yards to the end zone. Then you got Brody Beck, a quarterback who wasn't even expected to play quarterback. He was expected to be a running back. Another guy quits. He steps in. Looks like just a monster out there. We all knew him as an all-state linebacker, but I think he might, have a chance of being an all-state quarterback after what we saw. Runs for over 100 yards, a couple touchdowns. He chops his feet when he runs better than anyone I've ever seen. No one can bring him down on their own. So you've got defenders grabbing at his ankle, trying to wrap their arms around his hips, and they just can't bring him down. And it was this 1-2 combination that American Falls couldn't figure out. American Falls, they've been down for a couple of years. I don't know if, many people expected them to pull the upset, but they're a big team that had real trouble with the Adamson-Beck duo. And I think that, really bodes well for Aberdeen going forward.
Yeah, that's a tough 1-2 combo to stop as Aberdeen wins 38-15. For American Falls, it was almost a reverse of the Cale Adamson situation where American Falls has a running back they really like named Brock Bailey, but they had to move him to the offensive line because they're low on numbers there. Yeah. And so he was wearing the number 55, even though in the program he's listed as number 22. And he did get 1 carry, which was kind of funny to see, number 55 get a carry. But yeah, American Falls, when you look at their roster, I don't know if you went back and looked, but they've got a lot of freshmen and sophomores on that team this year. There's not very many upperclassmen.
Yeah. And then that was the thing talking with coach Corey Hollingsworth afterwards is he's like, this can be kind of a learning experience. It didn't go exactly how we wanted, but I mean, you look at how young these kids are and they can really only get better.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be fun to watch American Falls and their progress throughout the season. Elsewhere in District 5 at the 2A ranks, you had Malad with their new head coach, Lucas Thorne. They played pretty well against Lyman, the defending 3A champs from Wyoming. They only lost 22-14. You had Bear Lake open up a big can against the Big Piney Punchers, 42-13. So Bear Lake, I think, is going to be pretty solid. And then Soda Springs shut out Ryrie 36-0. So the district as a whole went 4-1 on that opening weekend. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I can't remember the final numbers, but the Soda Springs quarterback, who probably has the best name in the state, Tug Cap, had 6 touchdowns. He threw for 200 yards, ran for another 100. had like 18 tackles. It's just a monster all over the field for them. And so that's pretty cool to, see him excel in a opening win.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to see, and I think it's going to be fun to watch that league unfold this year. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. So let's move on to the Rocky Mountain Rumble. We had several teams from District 5 competing in that both Friday and Saturday at Madison High School in Rexburg. Saturday is when we finally got to see the Pocatello Thunder for the first time this year, and they looked really good in a 49-0 shutout victory over Ogden, Utah.
Yeah, I was, I had heard the hype about Pocatello. Oh, the boundaries are changed. They've got more kids. They're bigger. They're stronger, all this stuff. But, I was still a little skeptical because I didn't know if their line could hold up. I didn't know if their defensive line was, good enough to get pressure. And I didn't know if their offensive line was going to give new quarterback Ryan Payne enough time in the pocket, give Reich and Echo Hawk enough holes. That was where I was skeptical. Then I watched the first quarter and I was like, holy cow. I mean, this doesn't even look like the same Pocatello team, which was kind of ironic for them to, start the Thunder era just looking like a completely different program under, Coach Dave Spillett. Offensive line, I mean, they created these just massive holes against a pretty good Ogden team. I mean, Reich and Echo Hawk, sophomore running back, gains 30 pounds in the offseason, comes out on the first series, which was this methodical 13-play drive. I think it went 80 yards. He has 53 of those yards, gets 7 carries, punches it in from a couple yards out. He ends up only playing the first half, has like 17 carries for 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, probably would have went for 300 yards if they played him in the second half. Just looked like a monster. I mean, 165 pounds, able to just run over guys, run past others. So that was the question mark, checked off. Ryan Payne didn't have to do a whole lot in his first start under center, but looked comfortable, made the throws when he needed to, knew where his receivers were and got him, in the right spots. And then the defense, I mean, Ogden was missing a lot of playmakers. They're struggling a little bit this year, but I mean, the duo of linebacker Hunter Killian, who's one of the better players in the state, and then defensive end Caden Hoddle, who was basically a receiver who they just kind of moved to defensive end. They got pressure almost every play. It was kind of crazy that every time the Ogden quarterback went back, it was, he had a second, if that. He had hands in his face. He was trying to backpedal, throw the ball, like lob it over guys. I mean, it was almost like you were afraid for the guy. He was like fearing for his life the whole time back there. They didn't allow a first down until like late in the game. I think it was like crunch time. They had pulled their starters. It was just a dominant victory that we haven't seen from Pocatello in recent memory. Definitely the most dominant since Spillett's been there in the last 7 years. And this looks like a Pocatello team who usually is known for getting beat in the trenches, who looks like they can compete with most teams in 4A. And all of a sudden, what you thought Pocatello's ceiling was seems to have gone up after week 1.
Yeah, Pokey's always had the skill, guys. It's always been a question of the lines and could they develop, and if they have, then look out. I totally agree. I'm excited to see Pocatello play some Idaho competition, yes, only because I have a better gauge for who's good and who's not in Idaho. Utah, I have no idea. So
yeah, I knew. I was in the box like in Madison with some of the opposing coaches. They were saying they were down on numbers, had some injury issues. It wasn't like a full Ogden team, which is, fine, but 49-0, I don't care who you're playing, that shouldn't happen. And so that was what kind of made it still very impressive.
For sure. Well, speaking of good defensive units, Highland got back on the right side of the ledger with a win over Alta High School from Utah. They played right after Pokey did at the Rocky Mountain Rumble. After losing that heartbreaking game to Rocky Mountain in week 0, they come back and win 26-13. And through 2 games, Highland's defense looks really strong.
Oh my gosh. And, you always know, like Nick Sorrell, he kind of works up that defense. They got Cade Ackley on the defensive line, always a pretty stout unit. But last year they lose just so many guys. I mean, you think of, Luke Togiai, Tommy Togiai's brother. Logan George was our all-area player of the year. It's like, you got these 2 monsters. How are you going to replace them? All of a sudden, Cody Colvin and Sloan Lamson, these defensive end and defensive tackle, respectively, step up. And I mean, it's like the offensive linemen are kindergartners. Every play, they're just, tossing them to the side like they're these 3'7", guys who weigh 100 pounds. It's unreal how, you watch them. Sometimes I get into the bad habit of going to a game and watching the ball. With Highland, it's like I'm just watching their defensive line running stunts and different things that they're doing to get pressure on the quarterback. And it's always, there's a tackle. Like Sloan Lamson, Cody Colvin are always around. Then you got Mason Fulmer at linebacker who, Highland didn't even think they were going to have this year. Or at least for the first part of the year, he was dealing with a shoulder injury. Somehow they get him back like the day before the Rocky Mountain game, and he's been exceptional. You got Adam Jones on the back end who, hasn't had to do a ton because, guys haven't had enough time to throw the ball. But, so you've just got it at all three levels of Highland's defense. You've got playmakers. The only problem is their offense at times just has not been on all cylinders. There's been different things where drives have stalled. They haven't been able to convert third downs. Sometimes their passing game doesn't get going until the third quarter. There's different things like that where there's so much room for that offense to improve, which, if it does and you keep the defense the way it is, like, look out.
Yeah, we saw that. We've seen that the last couple of years with Highland, where sometimes the offense gets out of sync or the passing game. But when that's happened, they could always turn to Caleb DeMusio and say, all right, we need you to carry us down the field. Well, they don't have that anymore. So they are going to have to get that figured out eventually. But Highland off to a great start, 1-1. Century was supposed to play last week. Their game against Ridgeview got canceled because Ridgeview had some COVID-19 problems. I think everybody was healthy by the time the game was supposed to be played, but they didn't have enough practices under their belts. So that's what happened there. Finally, the 3A ranks, a game that really I was kind of surprised by, I'll admit, was Snake River.
Yeah.
Just blowing past Kimberly 57-40. Kimberly, of course, beat Snake River twice last year, including that postseason game. And I thought coming in that Kimberly was the better team. Obviously, I need to readjust. And Snake River, deservedly, I think, is a top 5 team in the polls this week. And they look really good, Jordan.
Well, they weren't. I voted them top 5, but I don't think they made it.
Oh, they didn't? Oh, I voted them too.
Yeah.
We're only 2 of like
15, I know.
But
yeah, I was kind of confused how they didn't make it. Because you look at, Snake River last year started off 0-4. Jeb Harrison has been there for 6 years. I think this is the second time he's ever won a season opener. I called him after the game, and I was like, have you guys, since you've been at Snake River, have you guys ever scored 57 points in a game? He's like, dude, there might have been seasons we didn't score 57 points. He's like, this is just such an abnormal game for a Snake River team that runs a wing tee offense that's usually predicated on just running out the clock, slow drives. One of those things where if you can get 25 points, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. And, you had Zach Staley running the ball. I think he had over 200 yards, a couple touchdowns. Cole Gilbert didn't have to do a ton throwing the ball because they were just so dominant running the ball. And they just at every level could just run the ball at will. The 57 points is just mind blowing. I don't know if that's if you're worried like, oh darn, let up 40 points, if that's a concern. But I guess if you're scoring as much as you are, your defense is always on the field. I didn't watch, wasn't able to watch the game, so I'm not sure. But you have to think after that one, if you can put up 57 points running the wing tee, like good things are going to happen the rest of the year.
Yeah, you're doing just fine. And that 40 points is a lot to give up, but I really do think in 3A football, Kimberly is one of the most explosive offenses. So
yeah,
that number will come down as they play other teams for sure.
Yeah.
Marsh Valley played on Friday night at the, actually they played Friday afternoon at the Rocky Mountain Rumble. And that, man, a close game that they almost had, but they fall to one of the defending state champions from Utah, Beaver High School, 21-20. But that's a pretty encouraging opener for Coach Armstrong and the Eagles of Marsh Valley.
Definitely, because they got down early with about 30 seconds left. They were on the wrong side of the field. Hunter Roach, with 30 seconds left, throws this kind of like a heave, like 15, 20 yards into the middle of the field. The big receiver, Peyton Howe, jumps up, grabs it. all of a sudden you watch the film of him, he looks like he's, playing like, Donkey Kong, just zigzag, just all throughout the field. Ends up, scoring, I think it was like a 54-yard touchdown with like less than 30 seconds left. Marsh Valley's only down 1. And I haven't talked to, Coach Armstrong if they're like, we just aren't so comfortable kicking the ball. I know they'd made an extra point earlier in the game, or if they're just like, hey, we were down most of this game. We've got a chance to win it right here. We've got a good play call. Let's go do it. So they end up going for 2, don't get it. And so what looked like a really promising, could have been a, incredible comeback, falls a little bit short. But, you have to like what you see out of, Marsh Valley's offense. Hunter Roach was fantastic. Michael Belknap was pretty solid. Or his brother, too, had a couple touchdowns. And then Peyton Howe had like 7 catches for 175 yards and a touchdown. And you look at stuff like that and you're like, wow, I wonder if the Snake River Marsh Valley game is going to be, 65-60. So that was a pretty good statement, I guess, early on.
It might be like one of those basketball games they played so many times last year. We're up into the 60s and 70s, maybe.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, Marsh Valley, I think, is going to be really good. They'll be a playoff team, and I think they've got potential to go pretty far for sure. Yeah. Other scores from our area in week 1, if we look at the 1As, North Gem over in Bancroft, Jordan on our Idaho 8-man Prepcast, where we covered just 8-man football.
Yeah,
I went out on a limb. I predicted that North Gem would be the 1A D2 state champions this year.
Really?
So
wow. They barely pulled out this one. I think they needed a touchdown with like 8 seconds left to win the game over Grace, who's, classification ahead, but still pretty impressive. And I know last year the whole team was the Bridger Hatch show. The quarterback would have, 300 yards rushing every game. And this week they had 3 guys at over 100 yards. So a little more balance, I think, with the North Gem offense this year, which is, probably a good sign.
Yep, that running game is on point as always. It's all going to hinge on the defense, but they're 1-0. They start off nice. They play Cary this week, so we're going to find out pretty quick how smart I am, or yes, how North Gem really stacks up against the class of the conference or the state. And then otherwise, the only other score was actually we had Rockland defeat Camas County 54-20. Good start for the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
And then the only other game of note was Preston as they played Shelley, and the Russets came away with a 15-6 win. For Preston now through 2 games, they're 1-1, but only scored 13 points total across the 2 games.
Yeah, I think we knew that there was going to be a little drop off when you lose Cole Harris, their all area caliber receiver, and I think it's shown a little bit. But you had that early week 1 win, and I think they've got plenty of time to get back on track.
Yeah, for sure. So let's take a look at the schedule that's coming up for this week. Is there a game that stands out in your mind? We kind of talked about West Side at Snake River.
Yeah.
Pair of 1-0 teams. That's going to be a pretty good matchup.
No, I think that's the one I'm really circling is like, holy cow, this is going to be a fun one. It's going to be interesting, though. The Blackfoot at Idaho Falls. Blackfoot just, barely fell against Thunder Ridge this week. And it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. They had a pretty good showing. Austin Ramirez at running back had over 100 yards. They look good in some aspects, but, Thunder Ridge, a 5A team, I don't know how much stock you put into that. So it'll be interesting to see if Blackfoot can bounce back. Looking around, there's a lot of just our teams playing just way out. The one that's going to be interesting, Highland against Logan. Logan's a really good team in Utah, has so many playmakers. Highland's played, every week you're playing, Alta from Utah. The thing with Alta is they had this receiver who's like a 6'6" dude who's getting recruited all over the place, and he was out. And so it was a completely different team that they were really playing on Saturday. But you go Rocky Mountain, Alta, and now Logan. That's 3 of the toughest games that, anyone's the state's going to start out with. So how Highland can respond to, a third straight week of that type of challenge, that'll be fun to watch. That's Firth at Soda Springs. After that game, can Soda Springs look really good? Firth looked really good. Can Soda Springs pull the upset? Other than that, there's not a ton that I'm familiar with. except, like you were saying, the North Gem Carey thing.
Right. Yeah. I'll tell you, there's a couple of games I'm really interested in terms of, we're going to find out real quick how good these teams are. North Gem at Carey is one of them. And then I think also Aberdeen traveling to Declo. Declo, a semifinalist a year ago in the 2A ranks. They lost to Westside 7-0 in the semis. So Aberdeen at Declo, we're going to find out pretty quick whether this Tigers team is ready to take that next step and really consider themselves at the head seat of the table. And then the other game I kind of wanted to talk about was Pocatello. They're going to travel to Twin Falls to play the Bruins. That's a matchup of 1-0 teams. Twin Falls was picked to finish second in the league. They had a nice win over Valley View, which is a pretty good team from District 3. So I think, for Pokey now, this is their first measuring stick against an Idaho school going to Twin Falls.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about Twin Falls, but like you're saying, it's easier to get a litmus test when they're playing an Idaho team. Pocatello had about as good of a season opener as you can have. Can they carry that over? Is the running game going to be that good against, what we know to be a very good Idaho team? Can the defense get that much pressure against an offensive line who we know to be pretty solid? Yeah, I think a lot of questions are going to be, answered pretty quickly when they play Twin Falls.
Yep. Other games on the schedule in District 5, West Jefferson at American Falls, battle of 0-1 teams there. Century at Bonneville, that's a pair of 0-1 teams. Rockland is at Hanson. You've got Bear Lake at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Battle of 0-1 teams. Ryrie at Malad. Then you've got Grace at Oakley. That should be a pretty good one as well. Oakley, the defending 1A D1 champs.
Yeah.
Grace is a team that thinks they can contend for a playoff spot. And then you've got Star Valley at Preston. Can Preston score some more points? And then the last game is Marsh Valley at Teton. And I really like the Eagles big there in that game. So yeah. Definitely. So that's kind of the football slate. Now it's also going to be a big volleyball weekend in Idaho as well, and especially in Pocatello because it's the annual Peg Peterson Tournament at Highland High School. This is one of the largest Idaho high school volleyball regular season tournaments of the year. There's going to be a ton of teams. It's always exciting that Highland gets to have this annual tradition.
Yeah, for a long time, Highland, hosted this tournament and didn't perform very well. But last year they really came on. Behind McKenna Thane, who was our volleyball player of the year, who recently graduated. They placed better than they had in a decade or so. Then you got Pocatello, Blackfoot, American Falls, who's losing what I thought was one of the best players in Emma Barclay last year, but they return a bunch of girls. Bear Lake, Malad. Bear Lake also was right there. I think they finished second in state last season. So, a lot of good teams. And I think this is really when a lot of volleyball coaches say is their real early season. How good are we? And so I think a lot of them are going to figure that out pretty dang quick.
Yeah, last year it was an all District 5 matchup at the 2A. Westside beat Bear Lake in the championship, and Century, of course, graduated one of its most talented athletic classes of female athletes in some time. How do they bounce back and reload? So just a sampling of the teams that are going to be here. Centennial, 5A school from Boise. Filer, Highland, of course. We've got Malad, Minico, Burley, Emmett, Twin Falls, South Fremont, Pocatello, Fruitland, Blackfoot, Skyline, Parma, Bear Lake, Columbia. Sugar Salem's going to be there, the defending 3A champs. This field is loaded with teams from all over the state. You're getting some of those Boise schools that are coming over to compete as well.
Yeah, and with all the different classifications meeting at the same place, I know a lot of coaches aren't always like, it's gold or bust. It's, can we make a good run? Can we get to the quarters? Can we get to the semis? Because, if a 3A team does that playing 5A competition, they look around like, wow, when we start playing other 3A schools, we're going to be good. Even 4A, same thing. That's how a lot of these coaches look at it. And, that's why it's such a fun tournament.
Yeah. So we'll have plenty to talk about there. We'll recap the volleyball action from the Peg Peterson, and of course, all of the football action from this upcoming weekend as well. Want to remind everybody that, wow, I'm losing my voice because this is like the fourth. It's like the fourth podcast I've done today. So I'm not staying hydrated, Jordan. I'm not. On the homepage at IdahoSports.com, we've brought back our Gridiron Game Picks, where the fans compete against the Idaho sports personalities to pick all of the football games across the state. So it's super easy. All you have to do is register with a profile, and then you sit down, and every single football game in the state of Idaho, you predict who's going to win the game. And whoever has the most total games picked correctly wins $25. So some cold hard cash. It's free to play every week. Jordan, you can even sign up and do it if you want to. We'll put those skills to the test.
I think I would get killed.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get killed too, but it's fun for the fans to talk smack that, oh, we know more than the so-called experts, quote unquote.
Yes.
So.
Yes, very true.
Yeah, so that's on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. The Gridiron Game Picks. Get registered. You have until 7 o'clock Friday night to get all your picks locked in. Otherwise, Jordan, where are you going to be at? What's on the horizon at the Idaho State Journal? What are you working on?
Not sure where I'm going to be on this Friday, but revving up with a lot of Idaho State football stuff. Going to have a story in Friday's paper previewing to one of the better players for Idaho State. Going to the game on Saturday, we'll have a big front page story on Sunday from that game, and then trying to getting a lot of the soccer scores and volleyball scores starting to come in, starting to try and get a little bit of an understanding of what's going on around Pocatello, southeastern Idaho, top girls, boys soccer teams, top volleyball teams. We're learning a lot pretty early on, and so trying to really get a grasp of this early season.
Yeah, and again, folks, Jordan is a one-man band right now at the ISJ, so you're doing it all.
Yeah, I was like, I feel bad. I apologize. I was a little behind on some soccer and volleyball stuff early, and so now it's time to catch up and make sure I get all the coverage and respect of all those all the great teams around here. Yeah,
well, it's exciting to watch. Of course, it's going to be a big ISU weekend, so we'll keep an eye out for that in the Idaho State Journal as well. And wherever you're at Friday night, I know it's going to be a tremendous write-up. Yes. I'll read it the next day because I'm going to be in Rigby for the Battle of the Trojans, Post Falls against Rigby on Friday.
Really? Wow, that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, that should be a fantastic matchup. I'm looking forward to it. And otherwise, that'll pretty much do it for this edition of the Southeast Idaho Prepcast. Before my voice totally goes out on me, I better duck out.
Awesome. Sweet. I appreciate it. I will talk next week.
Yep, sounds good. For Jordan Kaye, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in to the Southeast Idaho Prepcast from IdahoSports.com.